All right, so hopefully you got these right. This first one, there's again two ways to look at it. You can either look at it from the beginning as a cosine function, or you can look at it starting from here. Actually, that would still be a cosine function. I'm sorry. Oh. So you can look at it as a cosine function, or you can look at it starting from here as an upside down sine function. So I'm going to start with the first one, cosine. So notice that starting from the beginning up to 2 is a regular cosine, so normal cosine. It's not going up or down. The x-axis goes right through the middle. So we can see that the amplitude is just from the x-axis to the peak or the x-axis to the valley, which is just 2. Okay, we can clearly see that the period is 2. So from here all the way to here, you can see that that is 2. So the b is going to be 2 pi over the period, which means that that is just pi. Okay, it's since the x-axis goes right through the middle, there's no vertical shift. And so that's 0. And there's no horizontal shift because it starts at 0. So that means the horizontal shift is 0. So this equation is just going to be a normal cosine, amplitude 2. So 2 cosine parentheses, and then b is pi, so of pi x. All right. Now, if we wanted to do it with sine, our starting place would be different. We would start right here. Okay. And notice that, let me erase the amplitude that I have written because it's kind of blocking everything. We can see that that is at 0.5. So the amplitude stays the same. The period stays the same. This is an upside down sine wave. The vertical shift is still, the x-axis still goes right through the middle. But now we're starting at 0.5 instead of starting at 0. And so because of that, the horizontal shift is plus 1/2. So putting this all together, you can see that my equation would be -2, because it's flipped, sine of pi, parentheses, x minus a positive 1/2. Okay? Remember that the minus is part of the formula. If we go back to the first page, this minus sign is always there. So that means if h is positive, it's still going to be x minus. And again, if you wanted to, you could distribute the pi, but you don't have to. So just to show you that it's the right thing, let's go ahead and go to Desmos. And we have 2, let me just erase these, 2 cosine of pi x. And that's from 0 to 3. So that's our picture. And if we graph the other one, it was -2 sine of pi x minus 1/2. And notice that that's still the same thing. Copy paste that. And so it's the same picture. All right, moving on to the next one. Hopefully you got that right. Here, the x-axis is in terms of pi. But the easiest thing to note here is we start with, whoa, okay. Sorry about that. Actually, I have a glove that I wear that keeps my palm from registering marks. Let me put my Michael Jackson glove on. All right. So anyway, The first thing we notice is that there's a sine. It's a sine wave. It's a regular sine wave. And the amplitude, let's see, if this is 1 up here, then this would be 2/3. Whereas B, notice that the period is 8 pi over 5. So 2 pi divided by parentheses 8 pi over 5. Okay? And when you do that, that should give you 5/4. And if you really wanted to check, you can get your calculator. And ignoring the pi's, you can put 2 divided by parentheses 8 over 5. And then math 1. And that gives you 5/4. All right, so the x-axis goes right through the middle, so there's no vertical shift. We started at x equals 0, so there's no horizontal shift. And so my equation is a normal sine wave, so it'll be 2/3 sine of 5/4 x. Now, if you wanted to do it with cosine, then cosine would start up here and go from there to there. So you can see cosine would start at 2 pi over 5. But the amplitude and the b stay the same. So this stays 2/3 because it's the same wave. That stays 5/4. But this is a regular cosine. Still no vertical shift. But notice that I'm starting now at 2 pi over 5. So my horizontal shift is 2 pi over 5. So my equation is going to be a positive 2/3 cosine of 5/4 parentheses x minus 2 pi over 5. There you go. If you want, again, you can distribute. So that's 5/4 x. And then here, notice that the 5's would cancel, and you get minus pi over 2. But I'll take either one, so you can have this answer if you want, and that's perfectly fine. So typing this into decimals, just to check, we have 2/3 sine of 5/4. Is it 5/4 or 4/5? 5/4 x. And this is going to go from 0 to 12 pi over 5. And there we go. So there's the graph. Notice that it matches pretty well. And then the other graph is, again, 2/3. But this time it's cosine. 5/4 x minus, and I believe that was 2 pi over 5. And again, this is from 0 to 12 pi over 5. Oh, notice it's the same equation. Woo! All right. So anyway, hopefully those went well. Let's jump to the last two. And these are the ones that are a little more difficult because they're shifted downward. But hold on. All right. So let's keep chugging. Why did I click on that? I don't know why. Close that. All right. So we want to see these two equations. So first, the most obvious one for this, you can look at it. It goes from on the top from 0 down to 6. So that means that 3 has to be right in the middle. So that tells us that it goes down 3. So my vertical shift is minus 3. Now, if we're doing a sine wave, starting at 0 is helpful because if you start at 0, there's no horizontal shift. You don't have to worry about that. This is an upside down sine wave, though. The amplitude is from there to there, which you can see is just 3. So my amplitude is 3. It's not always the same as the vertical shift. And the period, you can see, starts at 0, ends at pi. So it's going to be 2 pi over the period, which is pi. So that's just going to be 2. So I can fill in everything because I pretty much have all I need. It's a flipped sine, so negative 3 sine. B is 2, so 2x. There's no horizontal shift, minus 3. And that's my equation. Now, let's go ahead and do the next one. If I wanted to do a cosine, I probably would have started here instead. And notice that this is a flipped cosine. The amplitude is still 3, the b is still 2, that doesn't change. My vertical shift is still minus 3. All that changed is notice that we went this way by what looks like negative pi over 4. So instead of being at 0, now we're at negative pi over 4. So my horizontal shift is negative pi over 4. Putting that all together, I have flipped cosine. So negative 3 cosine. Two parentheses, this becomes x plus. So why is it a plus? Because remember, the formula always has a minus, but this went to the left, so it's negative pi over 4 minus 3. And so because of that double negative, that's going to turn it into a plus. Okay? And so instead of the 2 plus signs, I'm just going to write it as 1 plus. All right, so let's graph this. This is from negative pi to pi, so decimals should agree with me. So negative pi, 3 sine of 2x. It was 2x, right? Yeah, minus 3. There you go. And so that was our graph. Now if you graph the equivalent one for cosine, it's still going to be a 2. Now this is going to be x minus, I have no memory, x plus pi over 4. Minus 3. Again, from negative pi to pi. And, oh, I screwed up. So that should have been a regular 3. Did I make it regular? Oh, see, it's a good thing Desmos is there. If you saw me make that mistake, then I apologize. But if you notice, that's not a flipped cosine. That's just a regular cosine. I made a goof. I'm sorry. So if that was Gilbert on the test, I would have lost a point because I messed up there. There we go. And so now it's the same. All right. So now we go to our last one. The easiest one I see right now is the sine wave. starts right at 0. It's a regular sine wave. The amplitude right through the middle is 2. And you can see that from the top to the middle is 2. So my amplitude is 2. The period is 2 pi over 3. So 2 pi divided by 2 pi over 3. If you work that out, the 2 pi's cancel, the 3 flips up to the top. That just gives you 3. The vertical shift is up 2. Horizontal shift is none. And I can write my equation. So it's 2 sine 3x plus 2. All right, and this is from negative pi over 6 to 2 pi over 3. So just to avoid any mistakes, let's go to Desmos, and let's make sure we got it right. 2 sine of 3x, 2 sine of 3x plus 2. There you go. So far looking good. From negative pi over 6 to 2 pi over 3. And that's our graph. Yay. So now let's look at the other one. Not the other one, but if we wanted to do a cosine. So cosine would start here, and this is the upside down cosine. The amplitude is still 2, period is, or the b is still 3, vertical shift is still up 2. Horizontal shift now is left, so negative pi over 6. So this is negative 2 cosine 3 parentheses x plus pi over 6, and then up 2. And that should work. So let's go ahead and graph it on Desmos. I'm just going to copy paste this and make the changes that I need. So it was a negative 2 cosine 3 parentheses x plus pi over 6, because it went to the left. And notice that we get the exact same graph. Isn't math fun? All right, so hopefully you got those right. Let me know if you have any questions. All the ones on the homework are pretty much just like this. They're not going to have the boxes for you, but when the test does come around, I'm going to make little boxes for you, so it all should work out. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions. Y'all got this.